These children were used like lab rats in a horrific psychological experiment in Italy, and it destroyed their lives. In the 1950s, on the island of Sardinia, Italy, a horrifying experiment was carried out. It was called the Sardinia Orphan Experiment, but it was no experiment, rather it was psychological torture. Dozens of war-orphaned children and babies were separated into two groups. One group was sent to foster homes. The other was locked in cold, sterile, Catholic-run institutions. Nuns were ordered to avoid touching the babies unless necessary for minimal interaction and affection. Some children were left to stare at walls in silence for months. Some never even heard their names being spoken. Some simply stopped trying to cry. Years passed. The fostered children thrived. But the institutionalized ones? They grew up broken. Some mute, some violent. Many mentally destroyed beyond repair. All so researchers could prove that love is a need, not a luxury. They already knew the answer. They just wanted to watch it break the innocence.
This woman became pregnant overnight, and no one could explain it. In 1945, in a quiet town in Kentucky, 22-year-old Evelyn Carter lived a simple life with her parents. She was known for her kindness, beauty, and deep religious beliefs. Her family was strict, and she had never been with a man. One night after a normal day, Evelyn went to bed, but when she woke up the next morning, her belly was enormously swollen, as if she had been pregnant for 6 months. She screamed, waking her parents. They were horrified. Just one day ago, their daughter was completely normal. At first, they suspected she had done something shameful, but when they looked into her eyes, they knew she was telling the truth. Word spread quickly, and soon, the town's doctor arrived. He ran tests, but there was no explanation. She was pregnant. But how? By nightfall, 2 Vatican investigators arrived, alongside chief exorcists. They told Evelyn's parents, if she stays here, she will die. The church is the only place that can help. Terrified, the parents agreed. The men took Evelyn away. 3 days later, she returned. Her belly was flat. Her body was normal, but something was off. Her memory was blurred. The only thing she remembered was walking into a massive church and lying on a bed, surrounded by silent priests. The town whispered. Some believed she had carried the devil's child. Others said that because the devil was once an angel, the child was half angel, half human. But years later, Evelyn finally remembered what they did to the baby once it was born, and it was pure horror.
These 3 kids are pure evil. In 1966, in the southwestern town of Greenwich, Connecticut, there were 3 ill-tempered kids, Damien, Caleb, and Axel. The townspeople called them the Little Satans. From the age of 5, the Little Satans began to show a cruel side, frequently capturing small animals in the town's woods. The other kids in town were terrified and kept their distance. However, the parents of these 3 believed it was just harmless childhood mischief. Most townspeople chose to stay silent, fearing retaliation from these wealthy and influential families. But the Little Satans' behavior became increasingly brazen. One day, a few children from town went missing, and the last time anyone saw them, they were with the Little Satans. Yet, due to a lack of direct evidence, the local police were unable to launch a deeper investigation. One officer, Marcus Hayes, refused to give up. He kept investigating quietly, watching the 3 families day after day. Then, one night, all the Little Satans' parents gathered together, and Marcus sensed that something was wrong. He immediately called for backup, and they eventually discovered a hidden basement. Inside, they found the missing children from town. As Marcus dug deeper into the case, he uncovered something even more terrifying. Do you want to know what Marcus found?
The most dangerous child of all time, and what he did will leave you shocked. Isaac Turner is a British boy, only 10 years old, who lived with his parents in a small village in England. From a very young age, Isaac showed something unusual. People didn't want to be near him, not even animals. At 7 years old, his own family began to notice that he never cried, never smiled, and always knew things that no one had ever told him. But the real terror began when his schoolmates started disappearing one by one. No trace, no clue was ever found by the police. The only thing all witnesses agreed on, Isaac was the last person seen with each of the victims. Suspicious, the authorities decided to investigate every step Isaac took. But little did they know that what they would uncover would leave everyone in shock. One day, Isaac was found walking alone on the road in the middle of the night, his clothes covered in blood. Upon investigation, the police discovered that Isaac had murdered all of his schoolmates. From that moment on, the government decided that he could no longer live in society. He was taken to a secret location, completely isolated from the world. But on the day of his trial, he revealed something that left everyone speechless, including the judge, who, without hesitation, did not imprison the boy.
This is the chilling truth behind the black-eyed children, and it's purely horrifying. In 1952, a small town in Texas faced a terrifying event. It started one cold autumn night with a man named Earl Buford, a friendly truck driver. Earl was sitting in his truck outside a diner, finishing his coffee, when two kids, a boy and a girl, knocked on his window. At first, they looked normal, but then Earl noticed their eyes. They were completely black, like nothing he had ever seen. The kids asked for a ride home, but something about them made Earl uneasy. He said no, but the boy pressed his hand against the truck window, and Earl swore the glass started to crack. Panicking, Earl drove off. When he looked in his mirror, the kids were still standing in the road staring at him. The next day, Earl told his friends, but they didn't believe him. That night, one of his friends, Jim Peterson, heard a knock at his door. When Jim opened it, a little boy with black eyes was standing there. The boy spoke calmly, saying, "Can I come in? I want to play with Sarah and Bobby." Jim froze. Sarah and Bobby were his kids. But how did this boy know their names? Terrified, Jim asked, "How do you know my kids?" The boy smiled faintly and whispered, "I visit them at night. I watch them sleep."
This is the true story of the child raised by a demon, and his laughter is absolutely terrifying. In 1952, a family in rural Texas adopted a boy named Henry, but this adoption was not an act of kindness. Henry wasn't rescued. He was offered willingly and knowingly. For years, the Millers raised him under strict rules, always in the shadow of an ancient ritual. Henry was never seen playing. He didn't cry, didn't complain. He just obeyed. Until one silent night, neighbors heard something strange coming from the Miller house. A laugh, number A child's laugh, but distorted, echoing through the shadowy forest. Days later, the family vanished without a trace. But Henry, he was still there, watching from the darkness. In the following years, residents began to disappear. Witnesses claimed to see a boy standing by the road with an empty smile, laughing softly. When they tried to approach, he vanished into total darkness. The police found the Miller house abandoned, except for one thing: a wall covered in symbols and, at the center, a name, Henry. He prayed for everyone, even the devil. In 2005, in the dusty outskirts of Tijuana, Mexico, a quiet 7-year-old girl named Sophia said her prayers every single night without fail. Her mother, Mary, would listen from the hallway, comforted by her daughter's devotion. But one night she heard something that froze her in place. Sophia whispered, "God bless Mommy, God bless Daddy, God bless my brother, and please bless Lucifer too, because no one ever prays for him." Mary gently confronted her. "Why would you pray for the devil, mi amor?" Sophia just smiled. "Because he's lonely." Days later, tragedy struck. Sophia was hit by a car in front of their home. She died instantly. At the funeral, the family couldn't afford a proper burial. They were preparing a simple, unmarked grave until a tall, pale man in a black suit appeared. He said nothing. He simply handed Mary a signed check covering every expense. Casket, flowers, everything. Confused, she asked, "Why are you doing this?" The man looked at her with empty eyes and replied, "She was the only one who ever prayed for me." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the mist beyond the cemetery gate. When Mary looked at the check, the signature was a single letter, L. The priest refused to speak of what had happened. The funeral director quit 2 days later. At the grave, they say nothing grows, not even weed. But late at night, locals claim they've seen a man in black kneeling by Sophia's grave, murmuring silent prayers. And if you ask Mary, she'll still say, "Some angels fall, but maybe some just want to come home."
Do you really believe what they tell you? Have you ever heard of the orphan trains? It was a covert operation, a hidden effort to repopulate and reshape the American Midwest. And it's just as dark and unsettling as it sounds. Between 1854 and 1929, the United States was facing a surge of immigration, with urban areas buckling under the weight of overcrowding. The government needed a solution, not just to ease the pressure in the cities, but to extend influence into rural America. So they devised a plan. Over 250,000 orphaned and homeless children were rounded up from cities like New York and put on westbound trains. This was sold as an act of charity. a chance to give kids a better life. But the truth? Far more disturbing. Many of those children were never heard from again. Over 100,000 vanished without a trace. Was it just sloppy record-keeping, or something far more sinister?
This girl showed up in her class photo 3 weeks after her funeral. In 1962, the town of Ivy Ridge, Pennsylvania, recorded the highest birth rate in its history. By 1974, almost every child from that generation had disappeared. Officially, the town blamed a series of unsolved accidents, but retired Sheriff Carl Dempsey later confessed there was more to it. In an old-school photo taken in the spring of 1978, smiling children posed for the camera. Among them is a girl named Lily Owens, wearing the same dress she was buried in. The problem? The photo was taken 3 weeks after her funeral. Locals whispered about a tunnel beneath the school, sealed in the 1950s after several workers disappeared during construction. They say it was reopened in 1973, not officially, but by something else. In November 1974, maintenance workers found 11 wooden chairs arranged in a circle in the basement. The chairs were still warm. No one ever discovered who or what had been using them. Today, the tunnel entrance is bricked up. They say at night, you can still hear children laughing beneath the floorboards.
This is the only confirmed case of reincarnation in human history, and it's truly horrifying. In the quiet town of Goobersville, Indiana, in 1939, a young couple welcomed their baby girl, Mary. For the first few years, Mary seemed like any other child, until she started speaking strange words no one could understand. Her parents thought it was gibberish at first, but as she grew, it became clear. Mary was speaking fluent Chinese. The family was stunned. They had no ties to China, no exposure to the language. Seeking answers, they consulted language experts, who confirmed that Mary's Chinese was not only fluent, but filled with phrases no modern child would know. As the years passed, Mary's behavior grew stranger. One day, she pointed to an old map and insisted, "Take me here." The place? A remote village in China. Desperate for answers, her parents finally gave in. After a long journey, they arrived in the village. While riding a train through the countryside, Mary suddenly demanded they stop. She led them to an old farmhouse, ran to the door, and knocked frantically. An elderly man opened it, and without hesitation, Mary bolted inside. The family followed, stunned, as Mary removed a brick from the wall and pulled out a small, dusty doll. Clutching it tightly, she turned to the old man and whispered, "Don't you remember me? This was mine." The room fell silent.
Chanak, a creature from Philippine folklore, appears as a crying infant to lure victims. When approached, it transforms into a vicious monster with sharp teeth and claws, attacking those who come near. It's believed to be the restless spirit of an unbaptized child or a demon offspring, often hiding in forests and remote areas. To stop the Chanak, one can throw salt or ash at it to repel its evil nature or recite prayers to weaken it. Some legends also suggest giving it a proper burial and baptism to release its spirit and end its malevolent behavior.
This is terrifying. A boy began drawing the crash of a plane with impossible details, but the flight hadn't even happened yet. In 1997, in the small town of Ashford, a 7-year-old boy named Dylan started sketching planes in his notebook. At first, his parents thought they were just normal children's drawings, but over time, the lines became clearer, too precise, until a veteran pilot saw one of the drawings and turned pale. The boy always drew the same plane crashing, engulfed in flames. At the bottom, he scribbled numbers and coordinates that no one understood, but the pilot did. It was a specific model, a 737. The route he recognized too, London to New York. But there was one problem. That flight didn't exist yet. Dylan began murmuring strange words while always drawing the same flight number. Always the same tragedy, each new drawing with more detail. The name of an airline appeared, the exact takeoff time, and the code ATC3. The pilot, now terrified, decided to investigate. He checked the records. No flight with that code, no accidents, but something froze him completely. A TC3 was the prefix of an aircraft that was still in the testing phase. The following week, the news broke. A new route was about to be launched, exactly like in Dylan's drawings. Same airline, same time, same aircraft. Desperate, the pilot alerted the authorities, but no one took him seriously. Until 3 days before the flight, Dylan stopped drawing. His final drawing was different. In the middle of the flames, there were screaming faces, and among them, the face of the pilot himself. The Forgotten Children of Unit 731. Japan's human lab during World War II. They called it a research center, but what happened inside was worse than any horror movie. And the victims, many were children. During World War II, Japan's Unit 731 was a covert biological warfare facility in Manchuria. To the public, it was a water purification unit, but in truth, it was a human experimentation lab. Prisoners, including children and infants, were infected with deadly diseases, vivisected alive, and exposed to frostbite without anesthesia. They called the victims logs, dehumanizing them completely. Survivors later described screams echoing through hallways and the unbearable smell of rotting flesh. One nurse, anonymously interviewed decades later, recalled injecting a boy with the plague, then dissecting him while he was still alive. She said, his eyes were still moving. Survivors, nurses, and even some soldiers never spoke again. Guilt silenced them. And what's worse? The US government gave Unit 731's doctors immunity in exchange for their research. Why were war criminals protected?